Let me share with you a story that changed my life forever, a story about love, loss, and an unexpected journey that began with a surprise visit. It was just 1 week before our wedding when I decided to make that fateful trip to see Sean, my fiancé. Looking back now, that morning in the kitchen seems like a beautiful dream, tinged with both sweetness and sorrow. We had just finished breakfast together, one of those simple yet precious moments that long-distance couples learn to treasure. The kitchen was delightfully messy, with dirty dishes on the counter and bread crumbs scattered across the table, but neither of us cared. Soft morning sunlight filtered through the windows, casting a gentle glow that made everything feel somehow more intimate and real. I remember breaking the comfortable silence between us, my heart heavy with a familiar ache. I told Sean how I hated this pattern we'd fallen into, spending time together, finally getting used to each other's presence, only to face another goodbye. My voice was steady despite the tension I felt, as I confessed how much I cherished every moment with him, yet feared that the distance between us might eventually break us. Sean's blue eyes met my green ones with such intensity that I can still feel that gaze today. He understood my fears, but tried to maintain his characteristic optimism about our situation. He took my hand gently and told me how the distance made our time together more precious, how each visit became something worth waiting for. With love and understanding in his voice, he explained that though it was difficult and sometimes painful, our relationship was growing stronger. He believed we were learning better communication and trust, and that the distance was proving just how real and strong our love was. I sighed, acknowledging the truth in his words as I stood up to start clearing the dishes. I apologized for seeming negative and told him how our time together was the highlight of my month, how I counted the days until we could meet again. Still feeling vulnerable, I looked out the window and took a deep breath before turning back to him. Even though he was on the opposite side of the country, I told him how close he felt to my heart, yet admitted my fear that someday this might not be enough. Sean came closer, helping me with the dishes while placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. He asked me to look at him, and when I did, he shared his own fears but reassured me of his choice, that he would choose me thousands of times over. He promised that no matter how many goodbyes we had to say, we would make it work. He painted a picture of a future where we wouldn't need to say goodbye anymore, just a good morning and a good night. I couldn't help but smile at him, feeling a mix of gratitude and love wash over me. I told him I would always choose him too, and that I believed in us. Sean continued, expressing his belief that we could overcome this, hoping that day would come soon when we'd be married, have our own home, and everything would fall into place. We finished cleaning the kitchen in comfortable silence, the sound of running water and clinking dishes creating a soundtrack to our ordinary yet precious moment together. When we finished, Sean dried his hands and turned to me while I was arranging the last few dishes. He broke the silence with an attempt at cheerfulness, telling me how he discovered something new about me every time he visited. He mentioned how I refused to fold towels his way and always found a way to add cheese to almost every dish I cooked. I laughed, the sound filling the kitchen with warmth. I teased him back about his quirky habit of arranging spices in alphabetical order, adding how these little details made everything feel more real. We moved from the kitchen to the couch, both seeking comfort in each other's presence. Sean held my hand and looked into my eyes, sharing how he often thought about our future. He painted a picture of a life where we wouldn't need to count the days until our next meeting, where he'd wake up beside me every morning. I rested my head on his shoulder and sighed, telling him how I shared the same dreams of living in the same city, building our life together. But until then, I knew we had to stay strong, keep planning, waiting, and loving each other despite the distance. Time slipped away too quickly, and soon it was time for Sean to leave. We stood up, looking at each other with reluctant eyes that spoke volumes of unspoken words. The drive to the airport was quiet, both of us lost in our thoughts, occasionally squeezing each other's hands as if to confirm we were still there. At the airport, Sean took his suitcase from the car and turned to face me. I tried to maintain my composure, but tears welled up in my eyes at the thought of saying goodbye to my fiancé. Sean held me tight and whispered in my ear, telling me that though this never gets easier, I should remember his love. He assured me this goodbye was just another step toward our future, promising to count the days until we'd meet again. He mentioned that his mother was handling all the wedding preparations and encouraged me to message him anytime for updates. I nodded, finally letting my tears fall freely. I told him I loved him too and asked him to be safe and call when he arrived. I mentioned that work would be busy starting Monday, but promised to respond whenever I could. We shared one last kiss, filled with promises and hope for our future together. I watched him until he disappeared into the terminal, my heart aching with a familiar longing that never seemed to ease. In the car ride home, I finally allowed myself to really cry. I cried not just for the sadness of parting, but for the strength of our love that even distance couldn't diminish. I knew our separation was temporary, but our love was eternal, and that thought gave me hope. 2 weeks after our last goodbye, I found myself at home surrounded by wedding magazines and fabric samples. Despite the distance between us, my heart was full of joy knowing I would soon be united with Sean. His mother, who lived in the same city as him, was handling the wedding preparations. Although I had initially worried about not being able to oversee every detail myself, I knew it was the most practical decision. As I immersed myself in the preparations, my mind wandered to thoughts of our special day. Lost in these pleasant thoughts, I decided to call Sean to check on the progress. After several rings, Sean answered, sounding tired but happy to hear my voice. "Hey, my love," I said, trying to inject some cheerfulness into the conversation. I asked how things were going, if his mother was managing everything, and if there was anything I could help with from my end. I wanted him to tell Melissa she didn't need to shoulder everything alone, that I could help even from a distance. When Sean hesitated before responding, I felt a slight unease creep into my heart. Sean hesitantly told me that his mother was working hard to make everything perfect for us, but then his voice changed. He confessed that he'd been thinking about us, about the distance, and admitted reluctantly that he felt it was affecting our relationship. My heart clenched in my chest at his words. We discussed the distance before, but there was an unfamiliar uncertainty in his voice that scared me. I tried to reassure him that we were fine, that the wedding was just around the corner, that we'd be together for real soon. I heard him sigh heavily on the other end of the line. He said he understood, but when he was alone, his mind wandered too much. He told me how much he missed me, beyond words, and worried that the distance was making us forget what it was like to truly be together. I searched for comforting words, something to ease his fears while trying to process his confession. I reminded him of my love, insisting that distance couldn't change that, telling him it was just a little longer until we wouldn't have to worry about the miles between us. I suggested we focus on our future, on our wedding. Though we ended the call with promises to talk again soon, his words weighed heavily on my heart. I knew I had to do something to prove that distance wasn't insurmountable, that our love was strong enough to overcome this temporary phase. Then, like a bolt of lightning, a brilliant idea struck me. I decided right then to surprise Sean with a visit, to prove we could bridge this distance. It would only take a day or two off work, and I was sure my boss would understand. I began planning the trip immediately, determined to reignite the flame of optimism and unconditional love between us. The following Monday morning found me sitting in front of my boss's desk, hands folded in my lap, trying to project confidence. My voice trembled slightly but carried my determination as I explained my need for a day off the following week. I promised to make up for it with overtime, explaining it was for something personally important. My middle-aged boss observed me with his usual serious expression before slowly nodding. He told me I was one of the company's best employees and that he trusted me, knowing I wouldn't make such a request without good reason. He approved my leave, asking only that I organize all my work before departing. Relief flooded through me as I thanked him profusely and left his office. Back at my desk, I immediately started searching for flights to Sean's city. My mind raced with excitement as I imagined his reaction when I appeared at his door. As I browsed through flight options, I smiled and reminded myself that everything had to be perfect. I needed Sean to understand that we could overcome the distance, that our love was stronger than any obstacle. I wanted him to feel just how much he meant to me. After comparing prices and schedules, I finally found the perfect flight. I hesitated for a moment before booking, but then took the plunge, my heart racing with anticipation of our reunion. This would show him that we could be together, no matter what. The next few days flew by as I meticulously planned every detail of the trip. I packed carefully, choosing items specifically for our brief time together. I found myself hoping for good weather, wanting everything to be perfect, eager to see the expression on Sean's face. Finally, the day arrived. I reached the airport early in the morning, boarding the plane with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. I tried to read during the flight, but my thoughts kept drifting to Sean, imagining how our reunion would unfold, what we'd say to each other. I convinced myself he would be overjoyed to see me, that we needed this time together to remember what we were working so hard for. After landing, I took a taxi to Sean's house, my heart beating faster with every mile we covered. I paid the taxi driver and stood in front of Sean's house, taking deep breaths to calm my nerves. I reassured myself that this was the right thing to do, that we both needed this, that nothing could go wrong. I told myself I belonged here, and started walking toward my fiancé's front door. But before I could ring the doorbell, I heard voices from inside. Sean was talking to someone. Curiosity got the better of me, and I moved closer to listen. Standing near the window where the voices were clearer, I wondered who he could be talking to at this hour. It seemed to be a serious conversation, with Sean's voice heavy with emotion. Anxiety crept into my heart as I tried to understand what was happening, why Sean sounded so upset. My mind raced with possibilities. Was it about the wedding, or something more personal? With my heart pounding, I moved closer to the partially open door, driven by an overwhelming need to understand what was happening. The voices were coming from the living room, and I could now clearly hear Sean talking with his mother, Melissa. Sean's words carried the weight of the world as he spoke. My heart sank with each word as I heard him say he couldn't keep seeing me, not in this situation. He said he couldn't let me go through this with the additional problem he was facing, that he needed to cancel the wedding. Though I couldn't understand Sean's reasons, his conclusion was crystal clear: he no longer wanted to marry me. Melissa seemed to disagree, though, urging him to continue with their plans. I heard her tell him not to let external factors or anyone destroy their love. She insisted that I had a right to know the truth, to know about my situation, and that he needed to be strong for me, regardless of his reaction. I backed away quietly, my thoughts clouded with pain and confusion. My mind desperately tried to make sense of Sean's words, searching for reasons behind his shocking declaration. Questions flooded my mind. How could he give up on us so easily? What about everything we'd shared, all the plans we'd made? I wondered if his love had truly ended, and what this problem they discussed could possibly be. The questions kept coming, but answers eluded me, leaving only an emptiness in their wake. Overwhelmed by frustration and grief, I realized I couldn't stay there. As much as I desperately wanted answers, I couldn't face Sean after what I'd heard. The fragments of conversation I'd overheard had frozen me in place. I knew I couldn't face him now, not after hearing that conversation. I needed time to think, time to understand. With a heavy heart, I made the most difficult decision of my life, to leave without revealing my presence. Each step away from Sean's house felt like moving further from the person I loved while simultaneously moving toward a painful clarity. What had once seemed like a certain future for us was now shrouded in uncertainty. Yet I knew that whatever the future held, I had to prepare to face it with or without Sean. The journey back was long and quiet, reflecting the emptiness that now occupied my heart. But within that void, I found a determination to grow stronger. When I returned to my own city, the quietness of my house stood in stark contrast to the turmoil raging inside my heart. As night fell softly and the world outside drifted to sleep, I remained trapped in a whirlpool of thoughts. My mind kept circling through the painful maze of recent events, like a record player stuck on the same heartbreaking track. Lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, I whispered into the darkness of my room, wondering how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I questioned whether I had missed the signs, or if this was all just a terrible misunderstanding. Every moment Sean and I had shared played through my mind like a bittersweet movie reel, our laughter, our touches, those shared glances that spoke of deep and true love. We had built something beautiful together, I thought to myself, something I believed could withstand anything, at least until the present. The pain of my visit to Sean's house washed over me again, fresh and raw. How could I ignore his words about not being able to see me, about needing to cancel the wedding? How could I hide the feeling that my heart was being torn into pieces? The uncertainty about what had caused Sean's change tormented me like a relentless ghost. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something behind his words, something he was trying to face alone. What if he was in trouble? I wondered. What if I was abandoning him when he needed me most? But I knew I couldn't live with these doubts hanging over me like storm clouds. I had to end it. Driven by a mixture of desperation and a need for peace, I picked up my phone. Each word I typed in my message to Sean felt like an act of betrayal and caution rolled into one. I told him that after everything I'd heard and felt, I didn't see any other path forward. I explained that continuing like this was too painful, that it would be better to end everything before the pain grew even deeper. I wished him happiness, though my heart felt like lead as I typed those words. Sending that message was the hardest thing I'd ever done in my life. Each word felt like digital tears falling into the void between us. After sending the message, I let my phone drop beside my bed. Wrapping myself in blankets, I finally allowed my sobs to escape. I let exhaustion and sorrow guide me into unconscious oblivion. That night, I said goodbye not just to Sean, but to a part of myself, the part that had loved freely and completely.
Meanwhile, in the other town, Sean sat on his couch, staring at his phone with a completely bewildered expression. Abigail's message about wanting to end everything had hit him like a bolt of lightning from a clear sky. His mother Melissa sat down beside him, noticing the sudden change in his posture. With motherly concern in her voice, she asked what was wrong, noting how pale he looked and if he'd received bad news. Sean ran his fingers through his hair, struggling to find the words. He explained that Abigail wanted to end their relationship, saying she had heard or seen something that made her doubt them. He confessed to his mother that he couldn't understand what she was talking about, as he thought they were fine, or at least he had believed so. Melissa frowned, trying to process the information. She remembered their conversation and wondered if Abigail had overheard their discussion about his health and his doubts about proceeding with the wedding due to the diagnosis. Sean shook his head in disbelief. He insisted it was impossible, saying Abigail should be in her town, though a sudden doubt crossed his mind about whether she might have come without telling them. He wondered why she wouldn't have come to talk to him directly if she had been there. Drawing on years of maternal intuition, Melissa began piecing things together. She gently suggested that if Abigail had indeed come and overheard only part of their conversation, it would explain her sudden message and desire to end the relationship. She listed the possibilities: fear, confusion, pain, that might be driving Abigail's actions. After a moment's pause, looking into her son's eyes, Melissa emphasized that what mattered now was revealing the truth. She insisted that Abigail needed to know what was really happening, that she had a right to know about his health condition. Inspired by his mother's words, Sean knew what he had to do. He began typing a response to Abigail, not just asking her to listen, but promising to be there for her no matter what. He pleaded with her to talk, telling her there were things she needed to know, things he should have told her earlier. He begged her not to make decisions based on misunderstandings and assured her of his love, saying that was all that mattered now. After sending the message, Sean felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. Looking at his mother, he found encouragement in her eyes. He knew reaching out to Abigail was the right thing to do, regardless of the outcome. All he could do now was wait and hope their shared love would be enough to overcome this unexpected obstacle. Sean waited desperately for Abigail's reply after sending his message. But no response came. The phone's silence was a constant reminder of the growing distance between them. That distance was now measured not just in miles, but in misunderstandings and wounded hearts. He kept checking his phone obsessively, hoping for some reaction from her, but the screen remained blank. What Sean didn't know was that Abigail, in her pain and confusion, had blocked his number, making direct communication between them impossible. Meanwhile, Melissa sat in the guest room, contemplating her son's complicated situation. Knowing her son's heart well, she thought that if Abigail had indeed overheard part of their conversation and misunderstood Sean's intentions, the young woman must be devastated. Deciding to take action, Melissa planned to visit Abigail at her workplace. She knew Abigail was a writer who often worked at a shared workspace downtown. She thought if she could talk to Abigail directly, she might be able to explain the situation and facilitate communication between the couple. The next morning, Melissa told Sean she had important business in another city. Though Sean questioned his mother's sudden trip, he accepted her explanation. Caught up in his own grief and confusion, the idea that his mother might have an unusual agenda didn't spark his curiosity. After exchanging brief goodbyes and a tight embrace, Melissa set out from Boston to Chicago, armed only with determination and hope to set things right. She promised Sean she would return soon. During the flight, Melissa repeatedly rehearsed in her mind what she would say to Abigail. She knew she needed to approach the situation with utmost delicacy. The last thing she wanted was to make things worse. She practiced her opening words, planning to acknowledge Abigail's pain and confusion while hinting at revelations that might change her perspective on recent events. When Melissa arrived in Abigail's town, the morning sky was painted in soft colors. It was the kind of dawn that seemed to herald moments of revelation and transformation. Feeling the weight of her personal mission, Melissa made her way to the downtown co-working space where Abigail spent her writing hours. She found Abigail immersed in her creative world of imagination and talent. The office manager greeted Melissa with a professional demeanor that conveyed both leadership and compassion. After hearing the reason for this unexpected visit, he cautioned her that Abigail was in her office but seemed rather down today. With this warning, he guided Melissa through the maze of desks and bustling activity. When the door to Abigail's office opened, Melissa found the young writer lost in thought, sitting alone among scattered papers and books that spoke of better days.
I heard a serious voice call my name. It was Melissa, Sean's mother, standing in my office doorway. My heart skipped a beat when she said we needed to talk about Sean. I looked up, my initial surprise quickly replaced by a wave of worry as I imagined the worst possibilities. I asked if Sean was okay, immediately sensing that this wasn't a normal visit. Melissa took a deep breath, and I could see her gathering courage to reveal something that seemed both healing and sharp as a sword. Then she told me the truth that shattered my world. Sean was seriously ill, diagnosed with advanced leukemia. She explained that this was why he'd considered canceling the wedding. He thought he was protecting me somehow. Her words echoed through the quiet room like a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of shock through my heart. I felt tears welling up in my eyes as grief and shock mixed with guilt over my recent actions. Through my tears, I confessed to Melissa that I hadn't known that I'd blocked Sean's number after overhearing part of their conversation and misinterpreting it to mean he didn't want me anymore. Melissa's voice grew emotional as she assured me that Sean loved me more than anything, that he just hadn't wanted me to see him suffering. She moved closer, offering her shoulder in a gesture of support amidst my conflicting emotions. Her confession brought fresh tears to my eyes, but also ignited a spark of determination. I asked her desperately what I should do, knowing I needed to fix everything I'd caused, to look into Sean's eyes and talk to him directly. Melissa promised to bring Sean here, assuring me not to worry. She said we could talk things through and resolve this together, explaining that this was why she'd come, because her greatest dream was her son's happiness, which she knew could only happen with me. As I nodded, Melissa and I shared a moment of quiet understanding. United in our common purpose, we left the building together. Walking toward my house, the setting sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, as if symbolizing a new beginning that awaited us.
Melissa found a quiet corner in the house, a spot that seemed to reflect the gravity of the moment ahead. Taking her phone and a deep breath, she knew her next words would be crucial not only for Sean's fate but also for Abigail's future. This call would serve as a bridge to reconciliation, or at least the hope of one. "Sean, it's me," Melissa began, trying to keep her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions she felt. She told him to come to Abigail's town immediately, emphasizing it was urgent. Her brevity reflected the urgency of the situation, each word carrying unspoken meaning. On the other end of the line, Sean's heart began racing. His voice revealed both surprise and confusion. Questions poured out of him: what had happened, why the urgency, was Abigail okay? His rising anxiety showed through despite his attempts to remain calm. The thought of an emergency involving Abigail brought forth fears he didn't want to acknowledge. Melissa kept her voice firm, telling him she couldn't explain everything over the phone. She only said that Abigail needed him now more than ever, pleading with him to trust her and come quickly. She walked a delicate balance, trying to convey the seriousness without causing panic. It was no easy task to convince Sean of the urgency while withholding the full reason. After a brief silence, Sean made his decision despite the unanswered questions echoing in his mind. He agreed to come as quickly as possible, his voice carrying determination. His response showed his love and dedication to Abigail, even in the face of uncertainty and fear. After hanging up, Melissa took a moment for reflection. She knew the next few hours would determine Sean and Abigail's future. All emotions, love, fear, uncertainty, were converging toward this imminent meeting. Speaking to herself, Melissa vowed to do anything to keep her son and the woman he loved together. This felt especially crucial now, as the illness slowly took its toll on Sean's life. She whispered that Sean deserved happiness, her eyes reflecting her love for both him and Abigail. As time passed and a new day dawned, Sean's journey to Abigail's town was filled with urgency and worry. The highway stretching before his car seemed like a metaphor for the uncertain path ahead. With each mile, Sean's mind repeatedly questioned the reason for his mother's urgent summons. Each thought made his heart beat faster. He wondered what awaited him upon arrival. How would Abigail react to his presence? When he finally reached Abigail's house, Sean felt a mix of relief and tension. This reunion under such mysterious and potentially serious circumstances was a moment he both longed for and dreaded. Melissa greeted him with a strong embrace, a gesture of comfort and encouragement, before leading him to where Abigail waited.
I waited there, my heart pounding, and when our eyes met, I knew my anxiety was written all over my face. A charged moment of silence passed between us, filled with emotion and expectation. I struggled to find the right words, finally telling him that I knew about his illness, that Melissa had explained everything. I watched as surprise crossed his face, followed by visible relief, the burden of his secret finally lifted. He told me with a trembling voice that he'd only wanted to protect me, that he thought if I didn't know, somehow leaving would cause me less pain. I looked at him through tear-filled eyes, but with understanding beginning to dawn. I told him that I would have stood by him no matter how difficult things got, that while I understood his reasons, I didn't agree with them. What mattered now, I said firmly despite my emotions, was facing this together. We moved toward each other shyly, step by step, until our hands touched, that physical connection symbolizing the reunion of our torn hearts. Looking into my eyes, Sean saw not just my love for him, but also my strength and determination. He confessed that while he didn't know what the future held, facing it together with me meant everything to him. From across the room, I noticed Melissa watching us with a small smile, seeing hope where there had been none before. Our love had proven its resilience through this trial, showing that together we could overcome whatever lay ahead. As the night deepened, we talked about everything, the past, present, and uncertain future. Sean opened up about his condition, his medical consultations, possible treatments, and his fears. I promised him my unwavering support, vowing to walk this path with him every step of the way. He warned me that the doctors couldn't predict how the illness would progress, but they'd said it was serious and could become fatal over time. He told me gently that I needed to be prepared for that even his mother was preparing herself. When Melissa finally joined us, the room felt filled with new understanding. We all recognized the difficult road ahead, but there was beauty in facing it together. I declared with conviction that we would get through this, that we would face whatever came our way together. Knowing our time might be limited, Sean and I threw ourselves into realizing simple but meaningful dreams we'd either postponed or never even considered. Our determination to embrace each day with love and joy became our guide through the adversity of Sean's illness. One sunny afternoon, as we looked through a catalog of local classes, Sean pointed to the dance section. His eyes lit up with excitement as he suggested we try salsa, saying he'd always wondered what it would feel like to move together, guided by the music. I couldn't help but smile at his suggestion. I told him how perfect that sounded, dancing together, letting the music guide us. Our shared enthusiasm for this new experience strengthened our commitment to cherish every moment. Twice a week, we met on the dance floor, learning to move in harmony to the vibrant rhythms of salsa. Sean would guide me through flowing turns, commenting on how impressed he was with my progress and how proud he felt of our life together. The idea of camping under the stars came to us one quiet evening as we sipped wine on the terrace. Looking up at the sky, Sean asked if I'd ever dreamed of sleeping with just the night sky as our roof. I told him I'd always wanted to do that, my expression dreamy and distant. He suggested we should do it, go camping somewhere away from the city where only the sky would be our limit, where we could see the stars and let moonlight illuminate nature. Cooking together became another one of our adventures. One day, while attempting an elaborate Thai recipe, Sean accidentally spilled fish sauce all over the kitchen. We both laughed as he joked about how the smell would linger for days. The conversation about marriage arose one evening while we were washing dishes together. Sean confessed that he still wanted to marry me more than anything in the world, that it was his greatest dream. I turned to face him, tears and love shining in my eyes. I told him I felt the same way, that no matter how much time we had left, I wanted to be his wife, to walk down the church aisle with him. He assured me it was a dream we could make come true, that he believed in it with all his heart. With determination in his voice, he suggested we plan the wedding right away, saying it didn't matter if it was simple or rushed, he wanted the world to know how much he loved me. In that moment, before any ceremony, we exchanged our vows of eternal love. Through these conversations and shared moments, we wove a tapestry of memories filled with love, laughter, and sometimes tears. Each day was a blessing of our shared life, proving the power of love even in the face of adversity. As we planned our wedding, we knew that having each other was everything, despite the challenges ahead. 3 weeks flew by, most of our time consumed by preparations. Finally, under a crystal-clear blue sky in a beautiful outdoor garden, Sean and I walked to the altar together. The wedding was an intimate celebration of our love and commitment, surrounded by family and close friends who had gathered to witness the strengthening of a bond that had endured time and adversity. Melissa was among the guests, her eyes filled with emotion as she watched her son proceed. She looked elegant, clutching a handkerchief to wipe away the tears that had already begun to form. As Sean passed by her, she whispered how wonderful he looked, her face beaming with pride. Sean squeezed her hand gently, his face radiant as he thanked her, telling her he was the happiest man in the world, needing nothing more than to be beside the kindest, most beautiful woman and near the two of us. He continued walking beside me, radiating complete contentment. As Sean gazed into my eyes, I could feel waves of love and gratitude washing over him. With deep emotion, he vowed before our friends and family to love and honor me for all our remaining days. He called me his heart and soulmate, promising to do anything in the world for me. I gripped his hands tightly, tears glistening in my eyes, and told him how he taught me the true meaning of love. I declared that he was my strength and joy, and that my vows to him were eternal, no matter what the future might bring. When the minister pronounced us husband and wife and Sean kissed me, the applause from our intimate gathering of friends and family blended with birdsong into a perfect symphony of joy and emotion. Our reception reflected our personalities, simple yet profound. Melissa gave a touching toast, wishing that our love would continue to shine like a lighthouse of hope and happiness, blessing each day of our lives. The months following our wedding were a whirlwind of happy moments and ongoing challenges. We lived each day with a strength few could understand, savoring life's small beauties while Sean's illness cast its shadow over us. 2 months after our wedding, on a quiet night, Sean lay beside me, his breathing slow and peaceful. The disease had progressed significantly, reaching its final stage. We'd spent that day in his favorite park, talking about everything and anything. That night, as I held his hand, Sean whispered his love for me, thanking me for being his everything and making him the happiest man in the world. Through quiet tears, I told him I loved him eternally, that he'd made me the happiest woman alive, and how proud I was to call him my husband forever. Then Sean slipped away peacefully beside me, wrapped in the gentle embrace of night. Our journey together had been brief but filled with deep, true love, a love that transcended pain and suffering while holding the power to heal. In the days that followed, I found comfort in memories of Sean, supported by Melissa and friends. Each moment of laughter, tears, and love became precious to me. Looking up at the night sky, I knew Sean's love would continue to guide me, like a bright star illuminating my path through the darkness. 3 weeks after Sean's passing, I found myself caught in a daily whirlwind of emotions. Memories of our time together washed over me each day with bittersweet intensity. During this time, after feeling unwell for several days, a moment of deep reflection led me to discover I was pregnant. When I decided to get tested, this unexpected miraculous news brought mixed feelings of joy and sorrow. Sitting in the doctor's office, in the midst of heart-stopping silence, I heard the hopeful whisper of his words confirming my pregnancy. Tears flowed freely, not just for Sean's absence, but for the joy and miracle life had granted us. This was part of Sean, a new beginning shaped by our continuing love. With trembling hands and a heart full of conflicting emotions, I called Melissa. With trembling news, telling her that I'd been to the doctor and discovered I was pregnant. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, followed by uncontrollable sobs. Through her tears, Melissa told me how wonderful this was, how Sean would have been overjoyed at the news. She promised I wouldn't be alone, that we'd walk this path together, and that she would be the happiest, proudest grandmother in the world. The following months became a journey of preparation and anticipation. True to her word, Melissa stayed by my side, offering not just emotional support, but helping with all the preparations for the baby's arrival. Together we transformed a small room in my house into a nursery, choosing each detail with love and care, honoring the man we both loved and missed so deeply. When the day of delivery finally arrived, my labor began before dawn. Melissa accompanied me to the hospital as waves of pain and anticipation intertwined, each contraction bringing me closer to the new life Sean and I had created together. In the hospital room, holding Melissa's hand, I faced the hours of labor with strength I didn't know I possessed. Between waves of pain, I found comfort in Melissa's presence, her eyes shining with tears of emotion and pride. When the baby finally arrived, his first cry echoed through the room, filling the space with the promise of new hope and beginnings. Melissa watched, deeply moved, as I held my child for the first time. Cradling him in my arms, I declared through happy tears that he was perfect and would be named Dylan in honor of Sean. My tears of joy mingled with the sweat and exhaustion on my face. Melissa came closer, gazing at her grandson with deep love and reverence. She whispered, her voice choked with emotion, that Sean would be so proud, welcoming our little Dylan whose arrival had brought light back into our hearts. In the days that followed, Melissa stayed by my side, helping me adapt to motherhood. Together we navigated the challenges and joys of caring for a newborn, each shared moment strengthening our bond. The baby's presence gave new meaning to my life, giving me reason to look toward the future with hope and determination. Though the pain of losing Sean never completely disappeared, my love for our son became a healing force, a constant reminder of the eternal love Sean and I had shared. Surrounded by Melissa's and my son's love, I found the strength to move forward, building a life filled with love, hope, and the promise of a bright future. In each of the baby's smiles and laughs, I saw traces of Sean. It felt like he was still with us, an invisible but deeply felt presence guiding us through sunny days and rainy ones. As the baby grew, each new milestone was celebrated with bittersweet sweetness. Melissa, now a devoted grandmother, would marvel at the similarities between her grandson and Sean. She often remarked, with a proud yet sad smile, that he had his father's eyes. She would say that Sean lived on through him. I found comfort and joy in my son's daily discoveries, each small moment a precious gift. I treasured every one of his first moments, his first smile, his laughter, each new gesture like precious fragments of magic in our daily life. I tried to capture each of these moments, knowing how priceless they were, serving as tangible bonds between our past and future. On lonely nights, I filled the silence with stories about Sean, telling our son about his father with a love that transcended absence. I painted a picture of a man filled with kindness, courage, and unconditional love. While putting the baby to sleep, I would whisper about how special his daddy was, telling him how Sean loved us more than anything, and how that love would always guide us. Melissa became not just my pillar of support, but also a living connection to Sean's memories, always by my side. We became mother and daughter by choice, weaving together our story of love, loss, and rebirth, wrapping the baby in the warm embrace of our unconventional family. As time passed, our sense of loss gradually gave way to a new way of living. Sean's memory became an inspiration for both Melissa and me, teaching us to honor the past while embracing the present. The love I felt for my son became like a lighthouse, guiding me through grief toward a future full of possibilities. Sean was present in every step of our journey, in the wind that caressed our faces, in the sunlight that warmed our skin, in our son's laughter. Led by the unwavering legacy of Sean's love and surrounded by memories, Melissa and I faced each day with courage and hope. We knew that as long as we kept Sean in our hearts, he would never truly be gone. He continues to connect our past with our present while lighting the path to our future.
You have reached the end of another touching story. We would appreciate it if you could give our channel a like and subscribe. This support helps us continue to share inspiring stories every day. Also, be sure to check out the video that will soon appear on your screen. We'll see you there.